Dungeon Masters, listen up. Want to be Dungeon Masters in the future, or players in D&D games right now with Dungeon Masters who did not do this, listen up. We're going to talk about the D&D pre-campaign survey. What is it? Why do you need it? How the heck can a pre-campaign survey benefit you? And I will give you examples of the exact questions that I gave my players for my pre-campaign survey. Tony Sticks here from TonySticks.com, and what the heck is a pre-campaign survey? Well, you might be thinking, oh, it's like a sheet of paper where you give to your players and it's questions like, have you played D&D before? What other editions of D&D have you played? While that is a pre-campaign survey, there's a lot more stuff that goes in depth into it. That's not the type of questions I look for or ask my players when I make and give them a pre-campaign survey. The whole point of the pre-campaign survey is to establish expectations between the Dungeon Master and the players. Ideally, this should be done before session 0, the session where everyone gets together, builds their characters, and the DM introduces the setting of the campaign. Ideally, it should be done before that. But why? Why is a pre-campaign survey so important that it has to be the first thing you do as a Dungeon Master? Well, not only will it reveal what your players' expectations are, but it will also reveal what your players' play style is like. This is important to know because you don't want to give your players a very in-depth, heavy dungeon crawl campaign with like little role-playing to a group that only wants to roleplay. Same goes the opposite way. You don't want to throw a roleplay heavy based campaign to a bunch of people that just want to kill monsters and gain power levels and all that stuff. Yes, you're the Dungeon Master and you have final say over everything, but it's important to remember that Dungeons and Dragons is a group game. If you want to be a really good Dungeon Master, you should tailor the campaign in a way where everyone gets to have fun and enjoyment. Maybe there's something that a player would like to see, or a monster they'd like to fight, or a setting they'd like to visit. Maybe there's something that's off limits to the player that you kind of make him feel uncomfortable with. You would never know this stuff unless you did a pre-campaign survey. And when you do the pre-campaign survey, it's important that you ask each player individually. If you have them all around the table for session 0 and you start asking them questions, maybe half of the group will say, yeah, we like combat, and then the other half, to try to just move things along in peer pressure and whatever reasons, they'll say, yeah, combat, yada, yada. What if they're role players? Now, there are a couple of different ways you could do the pre-campaign survey. When I did it, I typically hang out with my group of friends outside of D&D for other activities, and when we were doing the other activities, I pulled each player off to the side one by one, where I actually went ahead and gave them the little survey and asked them all this stuff. And to the players that I couldn't really get a good hold of, I went ahead and called them, and I got all the information I needed from that one-on-one phone call, which was actually a really great way to do it. But if you're a fancy Dungeon Master and you want to do fancy surveys, you can use resources like SurveyMonkey or Google Forms, where you can custom create a survey to send to everybody, or you can print it out and have them hand fill it. But that's a lot of work, and you're a Dungeon Master, so why not let's, do things the easy and lazy way. Speaking of doing things the easy and the lazy way, let me give you the exact questions that I asked my players for the Dungeons and Dragons pre-campaign survey. So I'm going to list them all here in this video, but if you want them all in writing, I have a blog post where I talk all about this. It's going to be linked in the description below. So here's some examples of my pre-campaign survey questions. Do you like to roleplay? Do you want minimal roleplay or lots of roleplay? Do you want more serious roleplay or funny roleplay? Do you want lots of combat or less combat? What is your preferred difficulty of combat? Easy, medium, hard, etc.? Is there a particular monster/enemy you'd like to see/fight in the campaign? Would you prefer an open world campaign or a linear campaign? Do you have any setting preferences you'd like to see, like an ocean, desert, city, other dimensions, etc.? What are your thoughts on magic items? Do you want there to be a lot of magic items or a few magic items? Do you want them to be powerful or weak magic items? Are there any magic items you would like to see in particular? Do you enjoy dungeon crawling? Do you want short dungeon crawls or long dungeon crawls? Do you like puzzles? Are there any uncomfortable topics you would like us to avoid? How long do you expect each session to last? Those are the questions I asked my players for the pre-campaign survey, and they were really eye-opening to me. My group in particular, they said they liked role-playing, silly magic items. They also said they disliked meaningless combat and extended dungeon crawling. They also said they hate puzzles and don't want any puzzles in the D&D adventure, which is stuff I would have never known had I not gave them the D&D pre-campaign survey. It was simple, it was quick, and suddenly I have this resource in the back of my head that I can use that, yeah, these guys don't like meaningless combat and puzzles, so I'm not going to give them that. But I will change this combat encounter in this modular campaign that I'm running into a roleplay encounter, so I could tailor the story toward everybody's enjoyment. Now, I'm sure some of you may be thinking this pre-campaign survey might be the stupidest and dumbest thing that you could possibly do because you're the dungeon master, you have final say, you should tailor the game to however the game is supposed to be run in the book. How dare you ask the players what magic items and if they want a lot of magic items or if they want easy encounters. Don't panic. It's a survey. It's not a I will guarantee that this will be in the campaign, because one of the questions that my players also gave me is they want a dragon. They want to fight a dragon in the campaign. And at that time, I was running Princess of the Apocalypse, which is a campaign that does not have a dragon. So I homebrewed a dragon into that campaign so that the players that requested in their survey that, yeah, I want to see and fight a dragon in the campaign at some point, were actually able to do so. Having this information is really good information for the Dungeon Master because you can actually use it against the players. Say, for instance, you want to send them on a quest that they're not going to have fun on, that they're not going to enjoy, and they're going to gruel, and they're going to hate the NPC that gave them that quest. Well, now you know. They don't like puzzles and meaningless combat, so why not use that against them? But you don't have to follow the survey exactly. Like my group, they said they don't like puzzles, but for one session, I decided to make it a haunted house murder mystery, mainly a puzzle-heavy session. To my surprise, they were actually really enjoying the puzzles because for a majority of the campaign, they didn't have puzzles, and then when I added the stuff that they said they wouldn't like, since it was so little of it, they really enjoyed it. Really, at the end of the day, the pre-campaign survey is basically a bunch of guidelines that you could use to tailor the campaign in a way where you can really make it fun and memorable so that everybody has a good time. And if you haven't done it yet and your campaign has already started or you're halfway through it, do it anyway. And if the people you're playing with are your really, really close friends, do it anyway. You will be surprised of what things you learn, and trust me, you could use those as tools and resources to your benefit to be a dungeon master so that everyone can have fun. Once again, if you want to reference back to all the questions that I asked the players or my version of the pre-campaign survey, there's a link in the description down below that will take you to the related blog post where you can find that information. And until then, this has been Tony Sticks, and may you have a fantastic day. And the best way to ask is